Welcome to another episode of Not Your Average Lives, where I highlight inspirational stories of midlife transformations. My guest today is Miki Sturges, who has a heartbreaking story of domestic abuse that she endured for 13 years. She shares her gut-wrenching story of verbal and emotional abuse that caused her to feel like it was her fault, until one pivotal moment when she realized her very life was at stake and she began planning her escape. Now at age 54, Miki has come a long way from the cowering, abused victim she was 20 years ago, with a particularly powerful public transformation that occurred last January that led her to finally embrace her past and use it as a tool to help others. She is now a trained coach and is using her experience to counsel women like the old Miki who are looking for their escape or who are struggling with mental trauma that came from past abuse. All right, I am here with Miki Sturges, and Miki is someone I met. Oh, and Miki is 54. I like to say age.
You have to say that.
A youngster. But I love Miki so much, and we are in a training. We are getting certified in neuro coaching, and so I know her pretty well from that. But we met last January. And I love the story. Yeah, last January. And I love the story of how we met. So I thought I'd start with that. Are you okay with that?
Sure.
Yeah. All right. So it was at a conference, a business conference, and she was randomly selected out of the audience. One person in this 3-day event is selected, and they have to go on stage. Of course, they can say no, but nobody does because it's an amazing opportunity to get coached by our mentor, James Wedmore. And she goes up there and sits in a chair, and he's pretty much like, what problem do you need help with, kind of thing. That's really how it starts. But I thought the most powerful and interesting thing is that she does a devotional every morning. And hadn't you written down that you were looking for guidance?
Yes, totally.
Yeah.
I was shocked. I don't know if you remember this. James said, this person, this pointing this chair, this person manifested to be here this morning. And I was one of those people. I'm like, no, I didn't manifest anything. I was like this, I didn't want people raising their hands to be on a hot seat. And I was like, no, I'm not going to be there. No. And I didn't manifest anything. And then when she said, look under the seat, I found it. I was like, do you have this thing? And I was talking, do you have this? Do you have this? And of course they were like, you. I was shocked.
Yeah. So he had this thing that said, you're the person under her seat. Yeah. And so he said, this, whoever gets it, it's meant to be. And then you go there, and then you say that you had put in your devotion that you were looking for a sign from God that and I mean, and it went on from there. I mean, that's just the beginning. But Miki, I mean, you cried, you had some breakthroughs, it was so powerful. And then everybody wrote her a love note, and there was like 300 and some people there, and she had this big stack of.
I have actually binder.
Yeah.
Somewhere here. Yes. Because every single one is precious.
Yeah. And little did I know that how well I would get to know her. And it's been, almost 12 months. So, but Miki has a really powerful story that I think will resonate with quite a few listeners. And her story is one of domestic abuse.
Yeah.
And so Miki actually helps people through her coaching. And so and the transformation I've just seen from you in the last year in your coaching abilities has been amazing.
Amazing. Thank you.
And I also think it's, Miki has a heart of gold too. And she wants to really help people. So there was a lot of guilt for you around like a membership and charging for it because you just want to help people. And it's like, well, you will help people. And oftentimes they won't show up if they don't have a little skin in the game from having to pay for a membership, for example. And you can't help people. And the other message I thought was so great with James is, think of how much you can help the world from having a little bit of financial resources to do something. So I don't even know a lot about your story. So can you share your story?
Yeah. Well, before I go, when James said, what if you had $1 million? How many people do you think you can impact? It was huge to me. I was like, oh my gosh, that is so true. The more money you have, the more impact you have. And that really got to me. I was like, because I didn't want to charge anybody. I said, I just want to help and I don't want to charge anybody. And I could tell that a lot of people resonated with that.
Yeah. Wow.
But anyway, so I'm an immigrant, actually. I originally came from Japan. I grew up in Japan, and I came here to study English. I wanted to master my English. My degree was in English. So I came here to enhance my English ability. And then, of course, when I came here, I didn't, realize how little I knew. But yes, so I came here and I went to school. I went to university. Actually, I went to University Riverside to learn English. First, English as a second language course. And then I moved on to college here. But when I was going there to school, I met my now ex-husband. And I quickly fell in love. What's one of those things that many abusers are very charming.
Yes.
He was very charming. He was, to me, he was handsome. I don't know other people's opinions, but to me, he was handsome. And also, I grew up in this warm, my mom and dad never divorced. I had a good, living from baby to all the way to, college. So when I saw him, and I could just tell he was a street smart. So when I met him, I thought, gosh, he can just protect me. If anything happens, he will protect me. He will be a great protector. And I just sort of, that's where I was attracted to. He didn't care about what other people said. He had a Spanish accent because he's from Spanish, Puerto Rico. So he had a Spanish accent. He didn't care what other people said. So I was attracted to that. But once I started dating, I saw a red flag, but I didn't see it as red flag. I grew up in a home where my dad was the dominant person. He has the authority. When he said something, my mom would listen, and the whole family would listen. So it was a norm to me. But anyway, so that's, I felt like, well, he does, he will show a temper if I cooked something he didn't like. Or if I talk to someone like his guy friends, he will get really jealous. And I was like, oh, he loves me. Instead of thinking this is weird, I was like, oh, he loves me. That's why he's jealous. I'm sorry, And, but from the beginning, there was like pushing and shoving and things like that happened. But I kept saying, if I didn't do this, he wouldn't be mad. So I stayed. And also, I'm not proud.
How long to you got engaged and got married?
So it was like, let me think. It was very short.
Yeah.
Because one of the reason is that when I came here, I was, of course, supported by my parents. And when I told my parents, my mom, I met this guy, I'm thinking he might be the guy to marry. And she was so upset. She said, you're coming home. I'm not sending you any more money. And completely cut me off. And she said, here's the money. to buy the ticket. You buy the tickets, come home.
Mm-hmm.
And I rebelled.
Mm-hmm.
I rebelled and said, you know what? I don't need you. And I started to look for a job. But in order for me to get a job, I needed to have a working visa.
Mm-hmm.
And the fastest way was to get married and get a permanent resident status. It wasn't because of that. I didn't get married because of that. Of course, I loved him and I wanted to be with him. That's the reason why I married. It just so happened. It was like logistic, and he was saying, you need to go to work. You need to go to work. So I said, okay, I will go to work, but I do need to get a work permit. Okay, well, let's just do it. It was sort of easy. When you're young, it's like, okay, you get married, just go to a city hall and just do that paperwork.
And do you think somebody like him, like that's more control, like get you married and then he has total control of you kind of thing?
I'm not sure at that time.
Mm-hmm.
I really can't tell.
Yeah.
He was just basically saying, hey, why not? Kind of,
Yeah.
But this is like later on, he kept bringing this up. You got married with me because you wanted the green card. And I had to say every time, no, I love you. I didn't do that. I didn't get married because of that. And I had to like sort of prove to him over and over that I didn't get married because of that.
Right.
Because he kept bringing up. And so anyways, I was there 13 years. So in the beginning, it was like every weekend. During the week, I go to school, he go to school, and we go to work. It was too busy to like engage with each other. So weekend came, we'll hang out, and every single weekend, something would trigger him, and something happens, and then he'll hit me or shove me to the wall. I had to apologize every time. And then it started to subside a little bit. So it became from once a week to every couple weeks to 1 month, every monthly, so it cycle goes around, right? First, he's very, very nice. I love you, and just showers you with love. And then something triggers and boom, he'll hit me or do something. And then he would just totally blame me for, if you just didn't get me mad like this, I wouldn't have hit you, but I'm sorry. So he will apologize. And then I would say, okay, well, if you say you're going to change, I will give you another chance. So it was like cycle. So the first, the cycle was very short. It's like every week, right? But it became every 2 weeks, every 3 weeks. And then now it was like every month. So, but meanwhile, verbal abuse was constant. It was, he would not hit me or, like violently, physically violent, but he would say stuff like, what are you wearing? That's ugly. You need to change. You should look like that. Or, or you're just because you're working and making money, that doesn't mean you're worth anything. Stuff like that. Or you're crazy. You're ugly. You're too skinny. And when I gained weight, you're too fat.
Yeah.
I was,
did you share this with anybody, or did you keep it all?
Oh no, I kept it all to myself because first of all, in the beginning, I blamed myself. I was like, okay, I did something wrong. I did something wrong. And I have a tendency to do that anyway from the, as a person. If something happens, I will first take a look at me, say, what did I do wrong? Before I blame somebody else. So I already had that tendency. So when that happened, I was like, what am I doing wrong? How can I change? I don't know if you notice, I love personal growth, like personal development. So I would like listen to Tony Robbins or read a book, things like that, and then try to improve myself. But as I improve, if it didn't align or if he had a bad day or something, it just crumbled. And I was like, I kept saying, what did I do wrong? Why am I doing this to make him mad? it's like it was that struggle, the constant struggle. And then I during that time, during the 13 years, I've left a couple of times. But I went to my friend's house, and of course, when I go to my friend's house, the friends tend to be, of course, couples friends, right? So our friends he knew who my friends were. So he will call and say, hey, you should come back. I'm sorry. I'll never do this again. And I'll, of course, like trusted over and over and over. And, but at the end of 13 years, I was, so my son was born when I was 30. So he was 3 years old, and he was sleeping in the other room. I was lucky enough to have a really good job. So I was a human resources person and human resources manager. So I had to take we had a company trip to Japan. So it was really fun. And so, but because of my position, of course, I speak Japanese and I speak English. So I had to be a translator, I had to be a coordinator. So I had a busy time. I came home, he picked me up, and of course, my coworkers were, we came out together. So we are all waiting at the curb to be picked up. Well, my husband picked me up. Just so happened my sales manager was next to me, and he picked me up and he immediately said, so did that guy come on to you? Did you do something with him? It's like, I'm like, you what? I was like, okay, this is wrong. I came to a point where I was like, no, this is wrong, and I don't like this.
Yeah.
And I came home but of course I knew how he would react. So I said, no, don't, what are you talking about? That's not true. And when we went home, he kept saying that too. He said, you left your son with me. Now it's your turn to take care of him. So I stayed with him. And so the next day I told him, I think it's time for us to cool off, maybe separate. And he looked at me and said, you're kidding, right? So I said, no, well, I think it's, it's time because you accused me of things that I didn't do, and that's not right. And you keep doing that to me, and I don't think that's right. And he said, okay. And then I was surprised that he didn't do anything. But next day, I think it was next day, or I don't remember this detail, but what I remember is I was sitting on the couch. He went into the room. My son was sleeping in his own room, taking a nap. He came out and put the gun to my face, pointed at me and said, if you ever say this again, and if you ever get me mad again, I'm going to kill you. And I was taken back. But in my head, of course, I'm thinking, okay, am I able to promise him to never get him mad again? No.
Yeah.
So I say, you know what? I can never promise that I will make you mad. So why don't you just shoot me? I don't care. Just shoot me. And truly, I cared. I'm sure I cared, but I didn't care at that time. I said, you know what? Just kill me. I can't live like this. And then I could tell his hands were shaking like this. And then he pulled it down and he said, you are crazy. And who's crazy? Right? But he said, I was crazy. So I said, okay, yes, I'm crazy. And he went back and forth. I could just tell he was like really mad. And when he took off into the other like direction, I ran to the bathroom and locked the door and then start sobbing. And I don't remember how long, when you sob so much, you feel like you're going to throw up. That's how I was. I was like just sobbing my eyes out.
Wow.
But I didn't know what to do. I kept I kept thinking about my boy,
Mhm.
and I said, even I still remember I was like hold, putting my hand, my face to the towel that was there, and I said, Papa, my dad. I was praying to dad. To
Mhm.
me, it was my father in heaven, but at that time, my faith was just broken.
Mhm.
So I didn't care about Jesus. I didn't care about anything. I just said, Papa, please help me.
Mhm.
And I just cried and cried and cried. And I don't remember how long I was there, but he knocked on the door and he said, I won't do anything. Just come out. And then he said, I promise you, I won't do anything. So that's when I went out and I went to my boy's room and I just sat there and I just didn't know what to do. But I knew if I did something, I did like argue or anything, I know what's going to happen. So I said, I'm sorry I ever said that.
Mhm.
And I, let's just work it out. That's
Mhm.
what I said. But in my heart, it was done.
Yeah, yeah.
It was
And
done.
escape.
Yeah. And then at that point, I just, yeah, planned my escape.
Wow.
Yeah. And so next morning I went to work, and luckily I had a really good pastor, and I contacted him and he goes, I'm so sorry, I didn't know that. And
Mm.
even though I was going counseling with this pastor for many, many years,
Wow.
I never ever talked about it. I never said this was happening.
Wow.
So he was just shocked. And then of course he gave me resources. I contacted the domestic violence shelter and I told them my plan. My plan was I knew he was going on business trip
Mhm.
and I felt really bad, but that was really the only time I could escape.
Mhm.
So I said, in a week, he's leaving for business trip. I would like to come to the shelter then. Can I do that? And the shelter, I found out later on, they have a protocol,
Mhm.
to shift through those people who just want to get the shelter.
Mhm.
So that's what I did, and they said, well, we don't have opening right now,
Mhm.
but when you're ready, just call us. So I waited. I was like, oh, please, I need this shelter. I didn't want to go to my friend's house because I knew me.
Mhm.
If I went to my friend's house, first, I didn't want to burden them. And
Right.
also the second, I knew I probably would have gone back.
Mhm.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because nobody's stopping me. My friends can't stop me if I
Yeah.
say I'm gonna go back. But shelter, they will they will help you
Yeah.
not to go back.
Yeah, and I mean, I've seen a lot of TV shows on this stuff, and,
Yeah.
going to a friend's house sometimes puts them in danger
Oh, yes.
if especially
Yeah.
if a gun is involved.
Yes. And I didn't want to do that. I just said, you know what, I can't burden anybody. Even though some friends say, oh yeah, you can come at any time. But this was not just fight. You know what I mean? It wasn't this healthy marriage fighting. It was abnormal. So I just had to do that. And when I went to the shelter, they of course they have counselors, they have therapists,
Yeah.
all these people help you, legal aid, and
So
I
the
got
while he was on his trip, they got you in? Or
yeah.
yeah.
So as soon as he left for a business trip, I gather my stuff because I was just gonna be there for 1 week,
Mhm.
like 1 week, and I would just go back to work, and everything is gonna be okay.
Mhm.
Well, they allow me to stay for 50 days
Wow.
because that's the maximum days that they allow anybody at that time. I don't know how many days now, but
Mhm.
that's what they told me was. Yeah, I was. Of course, I have to take 1 week at a time to
Mhm.
evaluate and everything. But my case was so bad that they allowed me. And he left so many messages on my work, and then I
So you
was
can't and is that the protocol too? You can't they don't let you communicate with the abuser?
no,
Okay.
no, I can't communicate. So I can't
Did he not
communicate.
know where you were at all?
No, because
Okay.
to go to the shelter, I had to go to the police station, and the
Mhm.
policeman would escorted me to this
Wow.
location.
Wow.
So nobody knew. Nobody knows that
And your
location.
work, could he get you at work, or did you not
Oh
go?
yeah, he left a lot of messages.
Mhm.
Um, so
And
I
he didn't come to your work?
no, because he knew I wasn't gonna be there.
Oh, okay.
So I he did say that he went around, my work area and
Mhm.
see my car was there or not. Of course,
Oh,
he
so you didn't go to work for all that time?
yes, I actually talked to my boss at the time, and she was nice enough to understand. She was shocked too because,
Yeah,
of course, nobody knew what was going on. So she said, "Take your time,
yeah.
no problem." And so I did, and
Mhm.
and I had lots of comp time and vacation time accumulated.
Yeah,
So I
good.
had a really it was very nice of them to give me that, allow me to that leave of absence.
Yeah.
So yeah, and then I went to this shelter, and they were so nice because I was about to go home. I was looking at my son at the time, 3-year old,
Yeah.
just sobbing. His shoulders were going like this, and calling papa, papa. And I was like, oh gosh, for him, I might have to go.
Yeah.
I might have to go home. But then again, do I want him to be like him? Do
Yes.
I want him to think it was okay for him to abuse?
Yeah.
So that I
So
had to
same thing.
really think about that.
Any women he dated are married, yeah, because that was his role model, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So I didn't want that for him.
Yeah.
Um, but I've had this encounters after that, after I
Mhm.
got out, and I did have encounter, and also of course, because of my son, we had to exchange, right?
Yeah.
And one time I had to call the police because he would not release him.
Mm.
But he was like, "I can't believe you called the police." I'm like, "Okay, I'm sorry. This is what's." I was on the edge all the time. I was scared, and
Right.
I was scared that he's gonna take him away,
Right.
and that kind of things. And I don't know, it might not have been realistic, but it
Mhm.
was in my head. It was like,
Right.
never know what happens. I did not expect him to bring the gun to me.
Mhm. Right.
That was the last thing. I
How
was
old's
like,
your son now? He's,
he's 23 now.
23, I
He's
was
gonna
gonna
be
say.
24 in December. But yeah, so it's 20 years already. But it took a long time for me to even talk about it without tears.
Yes.
It was hard. It was a hard time.
Yeah.
And I felt, from s- like really naive thinking that I did something wrong to, gosh, I lost my 20s because, basically I was married all my 20s and early 30s. So like I could have been like doing something else. I could have been, I could have been happier, whatever. So I was angry,
Yeah.
resentment, and all these emotions. I went through all these emotions.
Yeah.
And then, of course, shame. I was so embarrassed
Yeah.
that I had to go through that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um,
Tough.
yeah. So it was tough, but now I'm 54. I've gone through that, and I have gone through a lot with that. But I was a victim for a while,
Mhm.
in the big victim mentality. This happened to me, and and I had to really shift my thinking. You're not a victim. This happened. Too bad. It happened to me, but I'm still alive. I can do something.
Yeah.
And I didn't. This was not in my plan, you know. So even though I had this heart, I went through this. I want to help other people realize this too, because I didn't realize I was being abused even in the beginning because of my upbringing.
Mhm.
So I was thinking I wanted to do that, but then I had to heal first
Right.
before I could help other people. And
Mhm.
somebody told me that at that time, are you ready really? And I wasn't,
Mm.
because I was still going through this emotion of, you know, like anger and resentment and like vengefulness, and a lot of things were still going. So I wasn't ready.
Well, and you probably also beat yourself up because you're thinking,
Oh, I
I've been so dumb, and he was
did.
right.
Yep.
Yeah.
How did I get myself into this kind of, it was that's why I didn't tell pastor.
Because in a way, it's like you've been brainwashed for so
Oh, yeah.
long. So
Yeah.
you don't have him to beat you up anymore, but you're going to beat yourself up.
Oh, totally. And, we are learning about brain rewiring now, right?
Yeah.
In neurocoaching. It's the same thing. So the belief is what thought repeated over times, right?
Mhm.
So the thing, so all these 13 years, every single day, if I were told, you're too skinny, you're so ugly, you're not worth anything, just because you're making money, that doesn't mean that you're good at anything. All these things I repeated over and over. And then of course I'm telling myself this too. It's like,
Yeah.
oh, maybe I'm not worthy. I might have to prove that I am worth, so all these things were rewiring my brain.
Gone, but all those thoughts he implanted are still left there.
It was there. So I had to really realize, but it took a long time for me to realize, even though I was so good at personal growth and, it's like personal development. I love that books. And yet when it came to me doing, I could come to push to a certain point. You can use your will to push through to a certain point, and then something happens, and it's like, fall down and then go back again. And I was like, what in the world is happening here? And that was my brain stopping. It was making, I was in the comfort zone. You know what I mean? And
At what point did it kind of switch in your brain that, like, I'm not a victim. I walked that journey and that path because I am supposed to help people. So that was the lesson I had to learn. So I could then be a coach or empathetic or whatever role you want to play, but you survived it. And so now what's your responsibility with that? When did you realize that?
You know what? Actually, this January, this last January, that when I was picked for a hot seat, I realized how important it was for me to listen to me, God's voice. I kept hearing this little voice saying, Miki, now it's time. You've gone through this. You didn't go through this experience in vain.
Yeah.
And I kept hearing that. I kept hearing that from sermon, from podcast, some stranger. I was like, all this was pointing towards, it's time for you to start sharing your story to help other people. And I kept saying no to that voice. And I was saying, no, no, I'm done with that. I don't want to get involved. I just want to, I have a nice husband, two more kids, we had 2 more sons. And now my oldest is now 23 and he's doing good. So I just want to, just get over, get away from me.
Well,
it was like trying to ignore it.
Somebody who has pretty much didn't share it with anyone for 13 years.
Yeah.
And you're very private. Being vulnerable like that takes a lot of courage.
Oh, yeah, it did. And the very first one I shared in public was I wrote a blog post for Hole and Lane magazine. And that was, I think, 2016 or something, 15, 16 or something like that. So that's been, 3 years ago. Because I was thinking, that's when I started thinking, well, maybe I can share a little story. And then I kept just saying, you know what, because, I didn't share this with you. I was in network marketing business. So I have been in this network marketing business since 2009. And I came to a certain point, I had teams and I had team leaders who I could coach. And I really enjoyed that. I enjoyed, motivating them. And that's when I realized I think I like coaching better than, trying to recruit people to get into my network marketing business.
Yeah.
And so everything sort of came together.
Yeah.
If I didn't do the network marketing business, I don't know if I would have even considered the coaching business. You know what I mean?
Stepping stone.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
mm-hmm.
So that's,
most of them, if you do become a leader and that you are coaching people,
mm-hmm.
But you also, I mean, you learn a little bit about having your own business, even though you're still kind of technically
right
under a company. They like to say you're your own boss, but
right. But you're making money for them.
Yes.
You
have that and a lot of personal development, which you need
when
you're a solo business owner. Yeah. So I think it's a great stepping stone and one you won't lose your shirt on. And
exactly. I'm still making just a little more, a little bit of money from that. So I can still get going with the business that I want to go into. Yeah. So really like the pivotal moment was, it was January of this year to really dig my heel into this coaching business, the life coaching that I wanted to do.
Mm-hmm.
Because that was just the biggest moment. Like you said, I was in shock. I was like,
mm-hmm.
Yes, there's nobody else but God who did that.
Yes. Yeah.
I'm one of those people. If there's a raffle or drawing, I'll never win anything. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I was like shocked.
You won what you needed to win. And I think, since my show is about midlife transformations, and of course we can say that you had the transformation of leaving your situation back, you were in your 30s, but like I witnessed that midlife transformation in January and it was powerful.
Yeah. Well, you didn't know that was a midlife though.
No, and then yes. And so I for my listeners, I thought Miki was, I mean, seriously, I thought you were probably in your 30s. I had no idea that she was in her 50s.
Oh, thank you so much. Thank you so much.
When I reached out and was looking for people as to be his guests, and she's like, "Oh, I can share my lectures." I was like,
"Yeah,
how old are you?"
Yeah, I know. That's what everybody says, and sometimes I felt like when somebody said, "Wow, you look so young," I felt like maybe I'm acting too young. Maybe I'm acting like a little kid. Maybe I should grow up a little.
That's voice again. I think.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Young is great.
That's what I was saying to myself, though. It's like I don't remember how many years ago. Maybe a couple of years ago, somebody said, "You look like you're in your 20s." I'm like, no. I don't look like 20. It's like, well, maybe 29, 28. You could go with that. I'm like, I can't. But that's when it made me think about, am I acting that? Maybe I'm acting young, too naive, and maybe I'm, So I had to
you lost a decade and a half, so you're making up for it. So you're really in your late 30s.
Yes, but I have done my menopause and everything is done. So
yeah, have fun.
Yes, now I'm having fun. But yeah, there are a lot of things that happens, and I did realize how selfish maybe I was, meaning young. I was young. I only thought about myself, and even though that experience really, I think because of the experience, I have grown.
Mm-hmm.
Until then, I was just a little girl who just didn't know anything, like, I just want to learn English. I love this culture, I love American culture, so I love everything about here. My personality fits here than in Japan.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
I so appreciate you being here and sharing your story and being so honest and vulnerable. What would you say to anybody out there who is struggling with domestic abuse?
So there's situation, if you're already in a situation and then you're in danger, you really do have to like gather your courage and go. There are a lot of resources out there. I didn't even realize that domestic abuse, domestic violence shelter was even available. And nowadays those things are big and known. So contact those local areas, the local police department. I think it's very important, especially if you have kids. Kids learn by watching. You think that they don't know anything, or they might not listening to it, but they are, and they're the kids actually create some stories in their head, even if it's not true. So it's very important to protect. I think as moms, we have a obligation to protect them.
Yes.
And I felt really bad.
And just because they're not getting abused doesn't mean it's not harming them.
Oh, yeah, it's like a secondhand smoke. That they don't think they're having any type of effects on other people, but of course the secondhand smoke is terrible for you too, right? The same thing. So if it's happening to you, but you may not feel like it's affecting the kids, because they're small or something, but
what do you think, since a lot of my listeners are grandparents and they might be recognizing abuse of a child, maybe that's an adult child, what could they do, or what could your parents maybe have done differently that would have prevented you maybe from marrying?
Oh, they couldn't have done anything, actually. Parents, sometimes we're powerless, aren't we? It's like, we tell our kids, this is what you need to do. I know the best, yet they don't listen, right? And then that's what I did. I was young and I felt so bad because I didn't tell my parents that I got married.
Right.
I rebelled and I didn't tell them until I had a baby. When I had a baby, I told my parents, I said, wow, I got married. Sorry, and they were like,
you were married for a long time.
Yeah. And I didn't say anything to them.
Oh, wow.
So yeah. And sometimes I told myself, this is a punishment that I for lying, but it was just naiveness. And then, but if you see your child, your daughter being abused, or even sons, sometimes, men get abused too.
Yes.
If you see the bruise anywhere, start like staying away from you, that's a red flag. So I think it's important for you to talk to them just openly. No judgment, nothing.
No judgment.
Yeah, no judgment. Just say, hey, I'm here to help you. If there's anything else, I can do.
And maybe encourage counseling.
Yeah, encourage counseling. And also, I would slip a little, here is the domestic violence shelter, like information center, or, you know what I mean?
Somebody they can talk to anonymously.
Yeah. Because I think that helped me. Yeah, I didn't want to talk to anybody that I knew about this, right? Because I'm embarrassed. But if I could talk to somebody I don't even know, like anonymously, I could talk more.
Yeah.
One time I did something, like I was late from work or something. I don't remember what it was, but I knew my ex-husband would be really mad. So before he came home, I called the church, like yellow pages, and I picked a church and called, and I said, could you please pray for me?
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And he was asking me questions. I said, well, this happened, and I think my husband can be violent. And he was like really concerned, but he prayed for me. And I said, thank you. And I hung up. And I tell you, that was a power of prayer. Nothing happened that day.
Ah,
And so I contacted them again, and I said, "Thank you for praying. Power prayer. I believe in power prayer," and that was like. But it was, I think, just to have somebody to talk to.
yeah.
I think it's important.
Yeah, I mean, your story reminded me of an incident when I was in my late 20s. I worked at a company, a small company, and one of the she was like an administrative assistant,
Mhm.
secretary. She was young, and she had a little boy who was very young, and her husband was in the military. And I remember one day she came into the office, and it was near Christmas,
Mhm.
and it was just a really odd story she told,
Hmm.
and she had a black eye. And she said, we were like, oh, what happened? And she said, I was out because she made wreaths. And she said, I was out picking pine cones and a tree and a branch hit me in the face. And it was really weird because it would have been at night. She was out picking pine cones. And
Mm.
but nobody really thought anything of it until a big bouquet of flowers came from her husband.
Mm.
And it was it was, I was like, oh, is it your anniversary? Oh no, you know. And it was like black eye roses. I mean, it was a
Mhm.
big bouquet of roses, and
Yeah.
they didn't have a lot of money because
Yeah.
they were young and he was in the military.
Yeah.
And a couple of us in the office put two and two together, and we realized she was getting beat up.
Yeah. Oh my gosh.
And so I guess, you know, in hindsight, I didn't know what to do. I'd never experienced
Yeah.
anything like that. But what you said about slipping, like just you don't
Yeah.
even say anything. Just
Yeah.
put the number down. Say
And
if
here.
you ever
Mhm.
need something here.
Yeah.
Just
You
like
know.
that. They don't want to talk about it, I don't think, and they don't
No.
want to acknowledge it, and they would be in denial because it's an embarrassing situation.
Oh yeah. It
And,
was. It
yeah,
was. Sometimes I wish I spoke up sometime, but I didn't because I was embarrassed. And a lot of times abusers are, like I said, charming. So my coworkers, in front of my coworkers, he would say something like, "Oh, this is a best wife ever, and she is most beautiful." And he would say stuff like that to make everybody think he is like the best husband,
yeah.
you know. So if I said something, yeah, they were like, "Are you sure? You're complaining too much," But
Uh, yeah,
yeah, but I didn't want to say.
yeah.
And that another thing is that
Did he ever
what
give you any visible
oh
marks?
yeah,
He did.
but it was not on my face. It's always here, like here, that you don't see,
Yeah.
because if you're wearing something, you
Yeah.
won't see. One time I had a bruise like right here,
Mhm.
and I was wearing, that was summer, so I was wearing a short sleeve, and I had a jacket on, because office is usually cold, right? So I had a jacket on, but when I took it off and I was talking to my boss, and my boss said, "What is that? What happened?" "Oh, I just hit it." You know, that
Mhm.
every time
Yeah.
somebody said something about my bruise, I would say, "Yeah, I fell down.
I
I
ran into
fell
my
down.
husband's fist.
I'm just really clumsy, yeah." And that's what I said.
Yeah.
But he never gave me anything on my face,
Yeah.
because
Oh,
he can tell. But he would hit my head
yeah.
sometime, and he would just shove me on the wall, and I just hated that. Yeah,
Does
and
your
I'm
son
glad.
remember anything from his childhood?
Oh yeah,
He does. Yeah.
that's one of the reasons that
Oh, great.
I sort of stayed, because I felt so sorry for him.
Yeah.
He had a rough childhood, and so
Oh,
and his.
not your husband, your son. Does your son remember anything
Oh,
from
oh, I'm sorry. You know what? No,
Okay.
he didn't even know why I left.
Oh.
For a long time, I didn't talk to him about it. That's another reason too. I didn't want for him to find out what happened, by me sharing publicly.
Mhm. Yeah.
But he's now 23, and I don't remember when he. No, that was when he was in high school.
Mhm.
So it's not too many years ago. I asked him to come home because he decided he wanted to stay with him when he was sixth grade. Oh, that broke my heart. Broke
Yeah.
my heart.
Yeah.
But he has this sweet heart that he told me once. He said, "Mom, if I don't stay with him, he's gonna continue drinking. He drinks beer. He drinks beer whenever I'm not here. So I need to be here."
Mm.
And I told him, it's not your responsibility,
Yeah.
But he said, no, it's okay. I will stay here. I want to stay here.
Mm-hmm.
And that's one of the reasons, of course, as a child,
Mm-hmm.
parent who has tons of rules, or parent who has no rules and give you everything that you want, which one you want to stay,
Yeah.
So he stayed over there. And then so during high school, he said something that was a little bit weird. So he told me, I think I want to come home, come home to you. So I said, sure. Yeah, you can come anytime. I would love you to. I'd love for you to come back.
Mm-hmm.
He said, and oh my gosh, he flipped out at my ex. Flipped out. It's like, you're not going anywhere. I thought he was going to kill him. And then again, he said, you know what, Mom, it's okay. It's okay. Just don't fight. I don't want to see you guys fighting. So I think it's one of those things that he told me he cannot get mad. He said, I just cannot get mad. So I'm feeling that there's some work has to be done, and he's really into personal development too. So I'm glad that he's working through this.
Mm-hmm.
He has some issues because of, I don't think it's because of this, but any divorced parents, divorced family, I think the kids has some problems.
Yeah.
But I'm more afraid that he was going to be stepped on because he's so nice and he doesn't want to cause conflict. He doesn't want to get mad. He doesn't.
So, and you say he doesn't remember anything, but maybe in his subconscious, he remembers that.
Some things.
Yeah. So he doesn't, he in his subconscious associates fighting, and
he hates fighting.
Like, he never wants to have a conflict because of that. Yeah.
Yeah. So I think that's what it is.
Yeah.
But, yeah.
Well, thanks so much.
Yeah. Thank you. Well, thank you so much.
Of perseverance and courage, and now living your best life. So I'm really happy that you got out of that.
Yes, me too. Me too. There are so many, when you become 54, you have tons of stories, Right?
We do. Yeah.
So, thank you so much, Lori.
All right.
Have a good day.
All right.